All right, we're back talking about the brewery, and I cleaned up this seam, which is going to be very visible from the layout. There was a bit of a crack there that was pretty obvious. So I came back and I filled it in and I filed it and worked it, got it nice and smooth, and then sort of repainted that corner. I masked off the whole building except for that and sprayed it again. So more masking, all right. And then also up here, in these corners, I think I mentioned it in an earlier video on the water tower, but these corners here, something smaller to point with there's actually three pieces that come together. The two side walls and the base actually form this little thing in here. So I came in and I filled those all in as well, and sanded them down and repainted that area, and cleaned up kind of this seam up here too, as it's very visible. And then over here, I ended up just painting this. I'm not gonna worry about a brick texture or anything. There's gonna be this roof's gonna sit down in there. And so it's just the top lip that's gonna be there. So I kind of cleaned it up a little bit. It's not my best work. You can still sort of see a joint line there, or an injection line there. And I'm not gonna worry about it. I'm gonna cover it with something, kind of hide that flaw. The side cleaned up better over here. And I also filled in all the corners on this trim all the way around, so when you're looking down on it from the top, it'll look like one piece versus having those seams in there. So that's an improvement. And then I came in and touched up, sorry, the camera's kind of shaky. That trim in there was still like a brick color. So actually, I did the same thing up here. The spray cans, you use this kind of thinner. So I sprayed a little bit in my, in one of the wells in my, what do you call that? Not an easel. Gosh, I can't remember what that's called. Anyway, sprayed some of the spray paint in there, put some of the thinner in it, and just used a brush and kind of went around and cleaned up the trim and stuff. Just to kind of cover things up. This edge up here had some of the brick color on it, so I came in with a small brush and made the concrete color go all the way to the brick without touching the brick. So that was a little tedious. So now I'm just kind of on details here. This ladder will go up on the side of the water tower. I need to put the loading dock on. And this is, of course, the railing for the loading dock where the stairs come down over here. Need to do this roof. And some of the interior parts are starting to come in. I've got a couple more on order that should come later this week. I don't know if I'll have them until later in the week, but I'm going to start working on the structure. So I took measurements of what the brewery interior is going to look like, kind of drew it out here. So obviously there won't be this plane right here won't have anything in it, but the other 5 sides of the cube will. So I've got my floor dimension, how deep it is, and then the height. So I'm going to go ahead and start building that, probably out of excess styrene I have from that for sale sign I've used in some other stuff. Start getting that painted up, and in preparation for all those detail parts for the brewery interior. So again, this would be basically that area open. And that depth basically goes all the way back to the backdrop. So a nice deep scene in there, lit up with a bunch of cool tanks and brewing equipment and whatnot. So that's what we're going to start working on as we finish off the structure here and some of the last little bits of detail. All right, so some progress here. I've put some weathering powders on the roof, just kind of simulate wear and tear and water and whatever. And also did the gravel treatment on the little roof on this side structure here. That's now glued down, and I put the ladders on the water tower and gave that just the slightest little bit of weathering with some black powder just around the base and a little bit on the side there, coming down on either side of the support structure. And then the little pipe that's under the water tower, I've now put that in as well. So making progress on the structure. What this now needs is a bit of a matte finish. some weathering. But before I do the weathering, I'll do the matte finish, and then I'm gonna put a sign on here. And then I'll weather it. And that just about does it for the exterior. Then move on to the interior. Well, it looks just like a brewery, doesn't it? I am just forming up the interior structure. This is actually upside down. The floor is right here, and you can kind of see some lines there. I scribed with the back of the X-Acto knife a 1-inch grid on the other side, the side that's down, to simulate expansion joints in a poured concrete floor. But I'm borrowing a page. Well, the whole sheet started warping when I did that. I didn't push that hard, I didn't think, but anyway, the sheet started to warp when I added that grid. So borrowing a page from modeling with wood, on the bottom of the floor, I'm using this 3/16 inch I-beam to brace it up, and using the 1, 2, 3 blocks to hold it flat. So with a little luck, this will give it some good rigidity and keep it nice and flat. And just showing the grid I put on the floor, and that support did the trick. That's much better, nice and flat. So what I'm gonna do is get the floor, start getting it painted up, and probably do a wash to bring out those lines, and then move on to actually building the rest of the structure. The walls will get some paint, the ceiling will get some paint. I saved a couple of these I-beams to put in the ceiling just for interest. Think you'll be able to see that actually. And I'm starting to get some ideas on how I want to paint that. So I think it's gonna be kind of interesting, especially the ceiling and the tops of the walls. Kind of borrowing from something I saw in the tents at Oktoberfest about 11 years ago in Munich. So some very interesting, sort of like a sky color. Anyway, I'll show you that as I figure out how to actually do it. All right, continuing to focus on the interior here. I actually went online, and these kits are about 11 bucks. So I ordered 2 more of these because I want that tank and that one, several of them, to be used as various fermenting vessels, etc., inside the brewery. I've started to work on this first one. The other one should, I think, get here tomorrow. So these are those 2 tanks. There's a smaller one and a bigger one. Just kind of cleaning them up, getting the halves put together. I'll need to come in and fill in, with putty, clean up those seams. So I'll be doing this for 3 of these smaller tanks, when the other 2 kits come, and 3 of these larger ones. And then I also, this was a little disappointing. I mean, I think it looks great, but this is the tank. It was a 3D printed part on Shapeways, and looking at the dimensions, it's exactly how big it said it was. It's 3 inches tall. And it looks great, but it's way too small. If I put it over here next to a box car, I mean, you're not filling that tank from a box car. So I'm actually going to use this inside the structure as well, which is kind of not planned. So I'll have those 7, so 3 of these, 3 of those, and that one probably up front, because I think that's probably going to be the better looking of all the tanks. So closer to the window. So I'll have 7 tanks, and then I have another set of different Walthers industrial tanks where, well, I'll show you when I get it, but there's like pipes that come out the top, and what I'm going to do is cut off the bottoms of them and build a whole brew house out of that. So that's coming, and that should be in the same shipment as the other 2 sets of these, which I think should be here maybe tomorrow. This is now Tuesday night, so I think these will be coming Wednesday the 30th, so hopefully keep working on that. And then, since that 3D printed tank was way too small to be the outdoor conical, I found there's a Bachmann pre-built, looks decent, conical tank that I think is meant for gravel and stuff, and I think I can modify that and use it for out by the track. So that's on order as well. And here's a look at the floor I made out of the for sale sign. It's exactly 4 by 8 inches, and the bottom of it's, you know, pretty well braced up to keep things, you know, fairly level. And so all these tanks and such I'll be arranging them on the floor, probably in, you know, 2 rows, and then the brew house over here, something like that. So that's what's coming. Just keep pressing on. All right, there's the basic structure. I cut these little doors in the back. The kit had an extra 2 of those freight doors, so I thought they would look good in the back there. Need to weather the concrete and start painting. I've glued, you know, the 3 walls plus the roof ceiling together. So I think what I'm going to do is give it a coat of black on the outside to kind of help keep the light contained, and maybe a light blue on the inside, kind of like a sky blue is what I'm thinking. And once I've done that, then I'll glue those doors on, and hopefully at that point I will have more of these tanks and start figuring out exactly where I want to arrange them, scratch build the brew house, and go from there. So making progress, moving forward. All right, package arrived. That means I can move forward. So as I mentioned before, I want to use 2 more of those and those. So here's 2 more sets of those industrial tanks. And I can use the other ones elsewhere on the layout. And this is what I want to use for the brew house. And what I'm thinking I'm going to do, so if I can show that without a bunch of glare, there we go, and get it to stay, is come in and cut right around there and just have the tops of these tanks visible coming out of the floor, with the piping coming out. And I'll probably invert that and head it up towards the ceiling, like I was talking about with all the steam and stuff that gets generated in the process and needs to be vented out. Probably use this little guy somewhere just to add interest, over near the fermenters, maybe a you know, something for transporting yeast or something, who knows. But if I've got room, I'll probably use that here as well. And then, all right, finishing that thought, got the ladder set here from Central Valley Model Works, all kinds of different ladders to choose from to make the platform that'll go around the brew house. And my thought here for the walkways is to build them out of roof walks. So got this set of roof walks I'm going to use to make the walkways with those ladders, and then the scratch built tanks there. And then in terms of other pieces of the platform, I've just got some 020 brass rod to work with. Probably also use this in the conduits for some of those outlets and whatnot, distribution boxes, whatever they are, the little power boxes on the roof, on some of those roof details. So that serves 2 purposes. And then last but not least, in this box, I've got just some different rattle cans here, a semi-gloss black and a gloss silver, because I really want the tanks and stuff to have a really clean, shiny look. If you recall, the roof details didn't quite have that shiny look I wanted. It was a little some big flakes and stuff in that finish. I didn't like that, so I'm hoping that this Tamiya gloss aluminum will do a better job of simulating what I'm at. All right, making progress on the interior of the brewery here. I've finished the outer structure through a coat of black paint on the outside, and that's just a primer gray on the inside. And I've got in the roof, I'll just tilt this back a little bit so you can see, 2 pieces of an LED strip, so that's 6 LEDs in there. These are the warm white LEDs, and I've kind of cobbled together a little 12-volt circuit here. And you see, and I know some others have talked about, that's going to be awfully bright, off 12 volts. So if I touch that, they're right. That's pretty dang bright, probably too bright. So what this is right here is a 0.5 watt, 150 ohm resistor. So if I actually put that into the series and touch the circuit on the other side of that. I don't know if you guys can see it on the video, but that's a lot less bright. I think that's going to work well. So that's with the resistor like that, and then without like that. With, without, with, sorry for the flashiness there, make good contact, with the resistor, without. So I think I'm going to go ahead and wire that 150 watt resistor into this whole thing. The other thing I did here is I put these supports in there. And I think if you're down looking in, once I get them painted up, you'll be able to see them, maybe, and they'll look cool, like, you know, big I-beams in the roof of an industrial area or industrial structure. But what they also do is, I think once I get those LEDs, they're just taped in right now. Once I actually glue that in place and run the proper wiring and stuff, that'll hide them from view. So you won't actually see the LEDs. You'll just see the lit up room with the tanks and all that kind of stuff in there. So making progress, having fun, and getting into a little circuits here, like high school science. Fun times. All right, I've improved my light intensity testing setup here a little bit. Actually brought the structure over and temporarily have placed the roof on the floor that I made there. So nothing in it yet. Tanks are all being made and joints being sealed up over there. So while that's drying, I'm over here playing around with the light. Oh, one other note. I did finish my little control panel for the power supply from the other video. So just has a little indicator light on it now for when I turn it on and off. So I'm actually pulling this power off the power supply now instead of that, you know, 8 1.5 volt batteries to get to 12 volts. This is actually the 12 volt power supply off the from the old computer now. So this is the 12 volt power supply with the 150 watt resistor in there. Played around with 300 watts. I keep saying watts. That is a 150 ohm resistor. That's good for half a watt. I also have tried the 200 and 300 ohm resistors, as well as a 600 ohm resistor that came with the exterior lights that are designed for a 3 volt power supply. I think I like the 150 the best, so that's things dimmed a bit. I can make it dimmer with stronger resistors. Like I say, the 600 was way too dim. I even feel like the 3 and the 200 are too dim. If I play with a 100, it's pretty bright. And here, let me, I'm gonna stop the video and show you what it looks like without a resistor at all. I'll be right back. Okay, so that's no resistor, and that is super bright. I turned off all the lights in the workbench just so I could see what it looked like in there a little better. So that's nothing. And then this is with 150 ohms. I like that. I feel like that's a little bit better. I can make it dimmer if I want to. This isn't a final decision. I'm just kind of messing around. So that's definitely not as bright as that. It's blinding. So that's a little better. Gosh, it's really hard to pick it up on the camera. It's almost impossible to tell the difference, but in person, trust me, this is definitely dimmer. The other thing, let me just put it back on, clip it back onto the resistor there. The other thing, from the right angle, you can actually see the light strip there, despite those girders. So what I think I'm actually going to do is move the strip closer to the girder that's in the front. And I think that's 6 lights. I think I'm actually going to go with maybe 9. Because again, this is hard to pick up on the camera, but it's definitely brighter in the center where the lights are versus on the either side, especially with the resistor in there. I don't really see it showing up looking through the phone, looking at what the camera's picking up. But as I mess around with it, I think I'll try that. So this is all new to me. I've never messed around with these kind of lights before, so kind of experimenting and having fun with it. So let you know what I come up with. All right, so just to show what I'm working on here with those lights, this is the, these are the ones I tested before. It's 6 LEDs, and I had soldered 18 gauge wire onto it. And even with a pretty hard bend in the wire there to go through the roof, it was lifting right here off the ceiling, just like you can see it's doing now, and off the ceiling of the structure, and there it went. Because I felt like I probably needed more light anyway, not more light, but rather than having shadows on the two ends. So I've redone this with, this is now 9, so 3 sections, and I moved down to 30 gauge wire. This is some of the stuff I use for DCC installations. So I'm gonna try that. Hopefully that wire will be a lot easier to bend and shape and hide and stuff. So like I say, I've never done this before. I'm just sort of learning as I go. But I did note that the exterior lights I bought that came already pre-wired had much smaller wire on it, more like this. So I figure that guy knows what he's doing, so I'll follow his lead and try that. So let's play with this. All right, just testing that last configuration with one little change. So I've got the 9 LED strip installed with the, the much smaller wire, so it's much easier to work with. And I've actually got a 200 ohm resistor in series there. And I think that's my final answer. I also went and glued in the doors in the back there on the back of the wall. I guess you can see that. So I've got some ideas about using an image from the inside of the Hockershore tent at Oktoberfest, which is where the name Himmel came from. There's a sign that says Himmel Brewing Company in the back of the tent, like hanging up way high. It's huge, and I believe it translates to Heaven of the Bavarians. And that's where the name Himmel came from for the brewery. And I think it would be pretty cool to just lift that sign and put it on the back wall. You may not ever even be able to really see it because there's going to be all the tanks and stuff in front of it, but I think that's what I'm going to do there. And then I'm going to move now to, I need to give this whole structure a coat of a matte finish. Get the sign. I've already worked on it on the computer. I just need to print it off, get that installed, and weather the building, and move on to the tanks, which I've already started. So continuing to move forward, I think I'm good with the electronics here, at least in terms of that LED. I do have some more lights I want to put over these 2 doors here. And I originally wanted to put one up there, but I realized, like a dummy, like a guy who's not done this before, I went ahead and installed that roof. So I can't, and there's a roof under it too. This roof goes underneath there. I don't really want to drill through there and try to fumble around with my fingers in there, so I think I'm just going to go without the light up there, it's a shame. I thought that would look cool, but I'll still have these 2 here, there, and there, and go from there. So that's where we're at. Okay, really, I'm moving on. Just showing that 200 ohm resistor is now in series, soldered and heat shrinked, and we are, in fact, moving on. Well, I told you I was moving on. Still messing with lights here. This is the gooseneck lamp thingamabob. There's 2 of them, and they'll go above the door on either side of the loading dock. There'll be 2. And I'm just playing around with these. Circuit here. Again, pulling off my 12 volt power supply. And the guy I bought them from on eBay supplied a, here it is, 600 ohm resistor, because these are meant for a 3 volt circuit. But I don't want to have too many things. So anyway, I just want to have one set of wires feeding the lights for the structure. So I'm going to use a different lead off the bus running through this 600 ohm resistor for these guys. So yeah, looks good. I like the kind of yellowish tint to that light. So I'm going to get those installed on the building once I've done the matte coat. Got to figure out exactly what size hole that is, and then that'll run through the hole. And then he supplied nuts to screw it in with. So just wanted to kind of test that, make sure, you know, everything worked the way it was before I started drilling holes in this building I've spent all this time on. So I was trying to think about how to use this industrial tanks kit to make the brew house. And I think I'm going to use these 2 vertical tanks as is, but instead of cutting them, they're a little more narrow than I expected. Here they are. They look more like hot and cold liquor tanks, maybe, that you would find in a brewery. And this kit also came with these tanks that are supposed to be horizontal, but I felt like if I don't use all the parts, and this is all just sitting here, nothing's obviously sanded or glued or anything yet, just sitting a couple of pieces on their sides of that horizontal tank, I think I get myself a, just finding something to point with here, use this guy here as the kettle, maybe, and that guy as the mash tun. You got your hot liquor tank, cold liquor tank. I can modify this piping, both hot and cold liquor. When I say liquor, it's really just water. Hot and cold water would be connected to your mash tun. So I modify this piping to put a bend in it right there, bring it this way, run a pipe down into here. That way, when you put your crushed grain in here, you need to hit a certain temperature. Sometimes you need to warm it up. Sometimes you need to cool it off. So hot and cold liquor. And then some piping from here to the kettle as well. So you would do your mash here, the enzymes do their thing, then you drain the liquid off of there. It's called wort, W-O-R-T. Comes off of that tank from what's called the mash, where all that starch is converted to sugars by the enzymes in the barley. That liquid gets transferred over to the kettle, where it's boiled and you add hops and things like that. And then once it's done with the boil, you cool it off and you put it in the tanks I've already worked on and showed you to ferment. So that's kind of the process. So I'm thinking about these 4 tanks arranged something like this, and then using these, this is for like roof walks and stuff. But if I cut these little bits off and glue them side by side and obviously cut it, I can make it into more of a square shape. And it's got a nice like metal grate pattern to it. I think that kind of being elevated up here would be sort of how a brew house would be laid out. And this is where you spend most of your time as a brewer doing your work here, managing these 4 tanks. And then, you know, so like some steps. This is from that Central Valley Model Works stairs kit. So you got your steps, your railing. You need to figure something out for a railing here. Playing around with some of the piping that came with the kit. I'm going to have to pretty heavily modify it. Obviously, it wasn't intended for this use, but that's kind of what I'm coming up with for the brew house itself in the brewery. So I'm kind of thinking about it. That's where I am, and I'll keep messing with it and bring you guys up to speed once I figure some more out. All right. Well, I had really wanted to get this wrapped up, but it's just a lot of little bits and pieces and things I've worked on in here. So this is the brewery interior. So I've got essentially on the right hand side here, the 3 smaller fermenters, 3 larger fermenters, that 3D printed one that I bought hoping it would be a big enough to be for the grain outside, and it's not. The hot and cold water tanks, I completely modified that line, put parts together that weren't intended to go together, added a hatch there, and this side being the brew kettle itself. My experience has been, it's been like a wedge shaped hatch that comes up. In fact, as I'm looking at that, I think I put it on there backwards, so I'll flip that around. And that's just a random piece of styrene. And the way the back lines up, you can see the 2 doors, one there and there. They're on the 1 inch over from the edge. So there's a door here and a door there. And then the exterior doors are roughly in the same place. So what I'm going to do for the working area, it's going to be up a level. So I've been working on got my stairs, the modified roof walks. I'm going to end up gluing them side by side and probably 4 wide, and then with this 020 brass rod over here, form up the frame that will hold it up, as well as probably a railing that goes around, and that will sit between these tanks here. So that's how the interior is coming along. Obviously all the tanks and everything need to be painted. I'm just still building things and figuring out how I want to lay it out before I do that. But this will all be a stainless steel, like, you know, shiny, you know, silvery stainless steel color. And lastly, over here on the building itself, I have now given it the matte finish. So the shiny brick is gone. Now I think that looks better. And my outdoor silo came in. Now that's more like it. I don't know if it's appropriate for the era. Frankly, I'm not sure if what I'm doing in the interior of the brewery is appropriate for the era, but this is just a throwback to a hobby I've been into and a direction I almost went one time I'll tell you guys about. But anyway, this is a Bachmann. It's actually made out of metal. It's nice. And I think what I'll do is, coming out of the bottom of the silo there, right in there, I will probably add a bit of piping that comes out of there and into the side of the building somewhere, and probably weather it up a little bit. I might put like a little Himmel Brewing Company sign up there. And I'll do something down here, some sort of a hose or something. I'm not sure how they got the grain out of the boxcars, but some kind of something, maybe that falls down into something. And then this line here is already there that would lift it up. So maybe I'll just tie into that with something that goes to the boxcars as the grain comes in. So that's where we are. I really had wanted to wrap this up by now. This is the 5th installment, but I guess I'm just going down the rabbit hole and having some fun with it. So I'm going to wrap it up there. Probably be one more part to finish this thing off, and then move on with scenery and some other stuff that I've got up my sleeve. So if you're still watching, thanks. Don't forget to subscribe if you like what you're seeing. Check out some of my other videos, and I hope everyone is well and safe. Thanks, everybody.